All right, guys, if you are watching or listening, you know that we love covering as many horror films as we can get our hands on, and we're always trying to break our number from the previous year. And we were sent a very cool one this past week to be able to get ready for its release. And one thing I'll say, we always talk about horror movies, they have like these periods of waves, whether it be zombies or demons or anything. In the last couple of years, it seems like good pairings or good combinations seems to be the wave, and it started with Hard Eyes last year. And every good horror film I'm really enjoying, I noticed that it's because of cool pairings. And the movie that I'm talking about is The Huntsman, and one of those pairings is a questionable detective, to say the least, named Reynolds, and he's played by our guest Brent Bailey. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
uh yeah, man, this movie, The Huntsman, it is, the vibe of it is very cool, like right off the get-go. It's kind of like slapping you in the face with Silence of the Lambs meets Supernatural, and it's eerie, and you don't know if it's like pure, just human maliciousness, or if it's something else going on because of the visuals that it gives you. So it definitely draws you in, and then we meet your character and your partner, and without giving spoilers away, there's like thicker ties to it than just that you guys are investigating this murder case. But this movie, man, is a wild ride. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was awesome to get to work on it, and I agree. I think that Kyle has such a unique way of storytelling where it doesn't feel super rushed, and you get to kind of really dive into these deeper, darker mystery, thrillers, and it lets it breathe a little bit more. I feel like some movies they move so fast you don't get a chance to kind of enjoy it all. So I love the pacing of this movie, and I love how dark he shoots it too, because it keeps it a little mysterious, where you're almost afraid of like what you can't see, and
Yeah.
kind of makes it more thrilling.
No, 100%. That's one of the things that they always teach you in, you know, horror lessons, or even film school. When I was going to film school and stuff, like lighting classes and everything, they would always say like the what we are making up as the viewer is always going to be the scariest possible scenario. And then, so choosing to do that and then kind of play off reactions of the cast, is it makes it scary. It makes it feel like you guys, we're right there with you guys. And but this movie, how did you come to the part of Reynolds? Was it audition process? Did you get contacted? Like, how did Brett Bailey find his way into The Huntsman?
I was actually a really last minute addition. There was somebody else attached, which is funny. I actually don't. I knew at the time who else was attached, and then they happened to run into a scheduling conflict, so they had to bail out and switch over to a different movie. And then they reached out to my team. It moved so quick that I actually didn't have to audition. Kyle watched my reel, then they showed it to the producer, and they just thankfully approved me. And I was on a plane like 2 or 3 days later, so I didn't even read the script
Wow.
until I was on the way there. But what I did know is who was attached, and I saw Garrett Dillahunt and Sean Ashmore and Jesse Schramm, and I was like, if they said yes, I'm in. And so I read it on the way, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is dark. And I was like, the whole time flying, going like, who is the killer? And that was the fun part of the script, and it does not disappoint in the movie. You're wondering until the end.
Yeah, and one thing I think that is what attributes to that is what you mentioned, and that is, the cast. You have Sean Ashmore, you have Elizabeth Mitchell, you have Jesse Schramm and Gillett Dillahunt, that are kind of like your direct castmates, that you guys are all kind of, even though there's times like you don't have that direct interaction, your guys' interactions are all kind of doing this dance with each other throughout the movie. And so you're, as the viewer, I'm trying to put it together. These are like this is how I get my wife to watch a horror film. Like she hates scary movies. She won't watch The Conjuring, but she'll watch all the Saws because
Oh,
she
wow.
asphyxiates on solving the puzzle. So I could show her the Huntsman, and she won't even think twice about the scary shit because she's just gonna be locked in on you guys the whole time, trying to figure out the murder alongside you guys. That
Yeah.
is how she sits there and watches it, and it's like to each their own. You could definitely do that, or you could take in the whole thing. That's why it's good for multiple viewings. Um, but how was that playing? Because you did your character specifically, you got to go to some of the coolest sets it looked like, and you did the whole time. I was like, damn, like he does he have like a one-on-one with Sean or Elizabeth? And then spoiler alert, there is like a good little one-on-one with you and Sean. And I was like, okay, cool, I want to ask him about that scene. Like, what was it like working with those guys, man?
They're all incredible, and thankfully, we talked about this in a different interview. Sometimes on these movies where it's like real dark, real heavy, and not not the most uplifting type of script, the outside, like in between, when they say cut, that's when it's the most important to be surrounded by a cast. It's really cool. And so Sean and Jesse, like we hung out actually quite a bit offset and became friends. And I think that that dynamic made it even more fun when we were rolling, because then we had like a comfortability where we could kind of push the boundaries a little bit more. I got to lean in and be a bigger jerk to Sean. I got to be awful to Jesse, which was sometimes challenging. But yeah, the sets were incredible. We shot in Oklahoma, and there's so much. It's very different than Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, people are not as excited about people making films, just because I think it's been happening for so long that everybody's a bit jaded about it. But in Oklahoma, it's just like going there with open arms, being like, do you guys need anything? Do you want to shoot in here? Do you want to go there? So our locations were awesome. And all of the locals and the crew that worked locally were so great. And so, yeah, everything was just fun about it. And you don't always get to say that about a movie, but it truly was. It was just an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it adds to the creepiness when you go out there, and you're in an actual spot like that. I would imagine like the vibe just for like you guys as actor and actress, like to get into the character definitely helps. I would imagine.
Yeah, like on there's a, again, spoiler, the movie comes out tomorrow. We won't say what happens in this, but there's that raid scene with me
Yeah,
where
yeah,
whatever happens. And so it's very dark. It's already kind of creepy. And then like as I was running up those stairs on the back, there was like a scorpion that like went down the steps. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It was like we're really in the thick of it out here, which does
yeah,
help every little bit. Those places too. There was the other scene where I get the information from the guy in what looks like an abandoned house. That was
yeah.
legitimately an abandoned house, and I was like, just don't run into a rusty nail in here and
No,
get.
yeah.
But it helps. It makes it more authentic. I think when you can have these locations that really are lived in and not built. It obviously helps out on the budget, but it also just makes it look so authentic that I think it translates onto the screen.
No, definitely. I think that you know we did things or have done things like on our channel for independent films that we're entering in the indie film festival for a fraction of a budget, and at that point it's all practical, and it definitely with that with indie horror especially the more practicality you can do the better.
Yeah,
uh Horror fans especially, they will forgive if it's practical, and the harshest film critic would say, "Oh, that looks terrible." A horror fan will be like, "Dude, that looks awesome." Like
yeah,
they would rather it be practical and not the best than digital and
right.
shitty altogether. And like horror fans, I think appreciate that more than most. And
Wow.
your stuff, like in this movie, there's definitely some horrific scenes that are these practical effects that are pretty freaking wild.
Yeah.
Uh, do you guys, when you guys were on there, the mood definitely, like you said, was dark. So was there a lot of like in between take shenanigans and stuff to kind of like not lose it, because we've talked to people that have like movies that are this dark, and it's tough when you don't want to give all these spoiler aways, but there's layers upon layers of darkness in this thing. I gotta imagine it had to have been rough after day after day of shooting, and it's just like, how can we make it even darker? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, everybody's got their own process. I think Garrett seemed to be a little bit more in like the method, so he didn't bounce in and out of it as much on set. Sean and Jesse and Elizabeth and I think kept it a little bit more loose in the sense that we could drop out and make it a lot lighter in real life. But then once they said rolling, we could jump back into it. And for me, I'm definitely the type that wants to be able to have that levity in between. Otherwise, shooting a movie for this one was pretty quick. I think it was only 15 or 16 days. But if you're on a movie for like 4 or 5 months, that's a tough thing to be submersed in this like
Sure.
really heavy material. So I prefer to do it that way, where it's we can turn it on and off and still have a good time. And I think one of the great things about independent filmmaking is everybody's just so excited to be there. Everybody's excited to make a movie. Everybody feels grateful for the opportunity. And everybody understands that there isn't an unlimited budget. So, even when we are having a good time in between takes, we're not doing it at the expense of the movie or at the expense of the budget and like delaying our days because of it.
Well, and the thing, there is definitely that, like the experience of independent horror filmmaking is everyone understands like time is money. We're trying to get this done, guys. Of course we want to get the best take, but at the end of the day, we only have time for so many takes within this. But your guys' cast is like, I mean, this is like right out of high school graduation, dog. Like, so Sean, for people that are listening or watching, Sean, we all know Sean, starting kind of like Fox's X-Men time period. Dude was Iceman. And then Sean has kind of been on and off of the scene ever since. Jessica, uh, she was, no, I'm sorry, Elizabeth was same
Lost.
time Lost, and then she counterbalanced with Mrs. Claus after Santa Claus 2.
Oh
And
yeah.
then that Disney World got introduced to her. And so everybody she had it down. Where Sean, won us over with the nerdism. Jessica, uh or God, I keep calling her Jessica. I don't know why.
Listen.
Elizabeth came in and she had the drama scene down, and then she came in and she scooped up the Disney universe with Tim Allen and the Santa Claus movies. But your guys' cast, man, you have the if someone's like looking at it on a streamer, which upon recording this, it comes out tomorrow on streaming services, um, you would see the poster and be like, oh shit, and people would want to click on it. And so you yourself, you have come from a series of you've gotten to work on some dope series, especially the NCIS, and now you're tying it all together, playing the the detective that everyone is watching, because you are the counterbalance. Some may say the shitty cop at the beginning, where your co-star is the more sympathetic character for reasons we don't want to go into because of spoilers. But for you to say that you took this role like 2 days and you're on a plane and you're filming, this is a heavy role to do that for. Like, what was the biggest challenge? Because 2 days, it's kind of like you almost, I mean, to me, it was like, damn, like the heaviness may not even set in until you're well into filming, because you're just trying to like learn it and hit the notes and let's roll. Like, how was that for you?
Well, I mean, I wish I could say that was my only obstacle. My schedule, thankfully, and I'm so grateful for it. I was so busy. I think we shot this in 2024, I believe. And when they called, I was like, listen, I'm already booked on something else. So I could fly in for a day, but then I have to fly back to LA for another project. And then they were like, yeah, we can work with that. We can work with that. And then I was like, and then I also have to fly to Mexico for another gig for 7 days. And then I can come right back. And they're like, okay, yeah, I think we can work with that. And then I was like, and then I
Jeez.
also have to fly back to LA again. And then at the very end, I have to fly to Atlanta. So I think I was on, it was something absurd. Like, I think I was on like 12 or 14 flights in a matter of like 15 days.
Oh my
And one
god.
of the trips, this was like when we were flying, obviously I'm flying from LA to Oklahoma. And so I worked a 14-hour day on set. I went home, did a red eye to Oklahoma. When I woke up, for some reason, because of weather, we had been diverted to Shreveport, Louisiana. So
Mm,
when I woke up, I was like, oh, we're not in the right place. And I was filming that night for the Huntsman for the opening scene with Jesse, where we're standing over, Jen Little.
yeah.
And they were like, there's no flights leaving. You're not going to get there. And so we scrambled really quickly. I got a rental car, drove 6 hours up through like Texas, made it to Oklahoma. I had like an hour and a half to throw my bags down and then went straight to set. And then we didn't wrap that day until I think like 5:30 or 6 in the morning for the next day. So this
Jeez.
whole shoot was like a whirlwind run and gun. Thankfully, I can memorize pretty quickly, so I memorized all my lines, and then it really was just me leaning on my scene partners and on Kyle, the director. Luckily, I do have the ability. Like I don't know if you've seen the morning show too, but I can play a pretty terrible guy on the morning show. So I've bounced in and out of, like, I go from like a really horrible person on the morning show to playing like Santa Claus for Target, which was ironic since Elizabeth was also Miss Claus. But I can kind of jump in and out of these worlds, and I've been doing it long enough that I feel comfortable enough. So luckily, when you're working with a great cast and you've got a great director and you've got a great crew, it makes everything so much easier. So I just got to come in, do my job. And if I wasn't hitting the notes exactly, I would trust that, that Kyle would be there to steer me in the right direction. But mostly if I just listened to Sean or Jesse and responded to how they were playing it, then it was pretty easy.
Well, that's a great compliment to your cast, and I would echo it, man, because you do well with all of your scene partners yourself. Like the film, the layers of darkness comment that I made. It's kind of like how else can it pull you in? And they you get hit in this movie, and it pulls you into another layer of, what is this act bringing you to? That's one thing that I think that you guys do exceptionally well, and like there's movies that do really well in the theater and then it goes to streaming and it like kind of just fades off into nothing. And reverse, there's movies that don't do great in the theater and then they hit a streaming service and they take off and people don't shut up about this movie. And then there's these like rare occasions where like the director and the editor, so compliments to both of them. They make a movie that is dope in the movie theater, but there's also like you can like a movie and streaming. Like I think the smart director and editor realize streaming movies, like, okay, occasionally you're going to sit down and watch it from start to finish, but a lot of people streaming a movie are doing other shit. And so they're going to like stop it, get up, go to the bathroom, stop it. The way that your guys' movie goes from act to act, I was like, this is dope because it's like they're almost breaking the fourth wall to be like, hey, guess what? Now this is going to happen. And it's like, oh shit. Like, and it does. And I appreciate that where you guys are able to both take us through this overall arc where, and maybe it's a film student thing that I noticed it, and average people won't even. But there was a thing that I thought, like, damn, like this, you could sit and watch in chunks, or you could just sit and watch the whole thing. I thought it was really well put together.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it is because you're a film student, so you pay attention to more of that stuff. And I think ultimately the goal as the actor and as as a person that's also a fellow film buff, you want to be able to do that so well that the audience doesn't really realize it's happening, even though subconsciously it does set up that way. So I think that just is an attribute to, like you said, the director and to the editor for making sure they did such a good job with that.
With this, are you, Brent, a horror fan? Do you enjoy a good horror movie?
I do. I really like a good like suspense. I don't love like I've sat down and watched the Saw movies and like Hostel. I don't do as well with like the hardcore slasher movies, but I love like a good suspense thriller or and I love acting in them. I did another one, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago now, but it was called The Stairs. And I was thinking about it when you were talking about locations. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's a fun creature feature, but there's one location that we shot, and it was up in Seattle where they took us to this like legitimate steam factory. And
Oh,
it went so far underground and it was so massive that it was impossible not to be creeped out, even as an actor down there, because it's all pitch black except for the lights that we have available. It's off limits to the public as far as I know. We had a permit for shooting there. But like that stuff, I think is so fun. And I love acting in those types of movies because you get like this dopamine hit from this little adrenaline rush if they're doing a good job. And
sure.
so I like movies like It Follows, or like psychological thrillers. I loved The Descent, where the
Yeah,
girls
that's a creepy
walking down
movie.
the caves. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a fan for cinema in general, and as long as it's done well, I'll give it a watch. Like the Blair Witch Project scarred me for so long,
Yeah.
and so did Cloverfield. Cloverfield was like one of those movies that I feel like, you know, it was a studio style, but they still did it so well where it kind of had that gritty feel that like a run and gun type movie.
Yeah, it was you were in it. You were watching his home movie. Like this was in Manhattan too. That's the other thing is, it's not in some other country. It
Right.
and Cloverfield came out, pretty sure that came out pretty close to 9/11. So it was like, so you had that aspect of a major city on US soil whole thing. And yeah, they got the timing of that one down perfectly. And I
Yeah.
did you ever see any of the Cloverfield sequels?
I did. Yeah. There was the one, wasn't it with John Goodman where they're in
Yeah,
the fallout shelter? Yeah. That one was really crazy.
yeah,
Were there three total or how many were there?
I think so. I think the
Okay.
Goodman one's the last one,
Okay.
and it like evolves into the Goodman one's just a full narrative shot. He's terrifying in it, but
This is
there's
so good.
no more found footage aspect. He's just scary as hell. But
Right.
um, yeah, the horror thing too always is fun to watch because they can do multiple subgenres in one, and I would say the Huntsman um, brings that bell or checks that box where we got multiple kind of subgenres. It's not just A or B; it's a combination of different colors of the horror genre, in which there are many that you can combine from. But
Yeah.
with that other subject matter in there, was that something that you had to um, kind of learn on the fly about? Because again, you're getting that you know uh, such short notice that, without getting into spoilers, but we have like the possibility of this other stuff being involved as to why they are the way that they are. I'll say like the headphones and the MP3 and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I was playing catch up for a bit of it, and like I said, thankfully we had good leadership because I mean, anytime you have an exponential amount of time to prepare for a role, it's amazing. But in our new world of like things move so quickly, you don't usually get that anymore. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure if you're playing like a character, you know, like Woody Harrelson was in LBJ. I'm sure he had more time to study, like research, and like become this character, or Austin Butler in Elvis. But I don't know how long Jesse and Sean were attached before we started going. So I think you just you read the script, you ask as many questions as you can. And I remember the first day when we did like hair and makeup tests, I got to sit down with Kyle and ask him all my questions about the script, ask him about like what direction he wanted Reynolds to go in, and then we had a good baseline, and then from there you just keep figuring out as you shoot each scene. And then I don't think you come in with a set plan of how it's going to go, because then that's not as much fun. It takes kind of the spontaneity out of the scene. So you come
Sure.
in, I get to see what Jesse brings or Sean brings, and then I also react off of that, and then they react off of me, and then you have this beautiful thing where you have two people just having an honest response to whatever's happening in front of them. So you're kind of learning as you go, but at the same time, you've done so much preparation ahead of time, whether it's even on this particular movie or script, but just in the art of acting or in the craft, that you can make these quick decisions and not have to go into panic mode.
And this kind of a film, would there be another horror movie that you are you open to any? Or
Yeah,
is there one?
actually have another. I don't know how I've jumped into this category, but I have another horror movie. I think it's coming out this year. They haven't given me a firm release date yet, but it's called Dead of Night, and it
Hmm,
has another incredible cast. I won't spoil anything, but definitely keep an eye on it. And it's more, it's a little bit like Stranger Things meets like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it has like a really fun, still kind of like a small town that gets like destroyed by a string of murders. And so I am happy to keep doing it as long as people will bring me on.
yeah,
It's such a fun genre. Like the horror community is so welcoming and so awesome. They're obviously, they want good products, but like you said, they seem to be much more forgiving. Like as long as it's a fun story and as long as they can see like people put the effort in and like didn't just slap it together, like they're so engaging. They show up, they spend the money on these things, and it's like one of those genres where it's just so loyal. And I think that's one of my favorite parts.
yeah. And the thing is, too, is the fans are always excited when people who aren't usually in a horror movie are, and that's the thing that's cool
Yeah.
about your cast is you guys to see you guys all do a horror movie is cool because as you said it's not your usual thing, but for all we know, you've got the second one already gearing up here. For all we know, we could be seeing Elizabeth and Jesse and Sean in more horror movies down the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
um, so this movie, The Huntsman, it comes out on streaming. It's already this being posted, it already is available. You can check out the link in the show notes. But it launched on the 10th of February. Super excited to share it, to have everybody watch it, man. This was a fun watch, and 2026 horror movies are in abundance this year, and it's been a pretty cool thing already. So this was another one to add to our list, and I'm excited, man. We'll have to get you back on when Dead of Night comes out,
Yeah, we'll
and
do it.
see you again, Brett. But thank you
Awesome.
for coming on to talk about it.
Of course, anytime. Thanks for having me.